Okay, we're officially live. So, first part of the chapter, we talked about graphing radicals, right? And you guys are really proficient at those now. Then we talked about stuff that was reviewed from last year, simplifying radicals. But we haven't talked about radicals in equations and how do you solve radicals in equations. In a way, you've already been doing it because you've been doing completing the square, right? And those were, they had radicals in those, right? We had to create radicals to complete the square, right? And we use them. So this is really not going to be all that new, but it's a slightly different take on what you've learned, okay? And so we're going to start with the bare simplest thing, and you're going to see if you understand this bare simplest equation and how to solve it, you can solve all of them. They are a piece of cake. They are so much easier than quadratics. It's not even funny. So much easier. All right. Let's say I gave you this equation. The square root of x is equal to 6. How would I solve this? Okay, don't say it outside. Don't say it out loud. Just look at it for a second. I want everybody to look at it. So Liam, look at that. Everybody look at that. Sakara, look at that. Think about how you would solve that. The problem is the square root sign, right? Wouldn't you guys agree with me? I mean, I wanted to say x equals not the square root of x. But there is a process that you can use that eliminates the square root sign. It's the terminator, right? It's like the terminator of the square root sign. Yes, Amika, what would it be? If you square a square root, it gets rid of it. Think about it. What's the square root of 3 times the square root of 3?
3.
It's either the square root of 9, which is 3, or it is just 3, right? So square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. So if I just square this, that'll become x. But I have to square this side too. So suddenly x is equal to 36. Piece of cake, right? You don't have to do the square root of something. You're just squaring it. And everybody knows how to square it, right? So whenever you square a square root sign, it just becomes that number underneath the square root sign without the square root sign, right? And then you square this side 6 times 6. Not 6 times 2, 6 times 6 is 36. All right, so if you know that, you basically know how to solve everything I'm going to show you.
Okay.
All right, so that's example 1. This is number 1. So here's number 2. What if I gave you this? The square root of x plus 3 equals 11. So some people might say, don't write this down yet. Some people might say, well, square both sides, just like we did before.
Yeah.
But if you square both sides, like this, if you square both sides, that means you have this. Don't write this down because this is wrong. That means you have a binomial that you have to multiply times a binomial equals 121, right? That would be a nightmare. Do you see what I mean? You would get rid of your square roots here, but then you'd have plus 3x plus 3x. You have 6 times the square root of x in your thing equals 121. That sounds like a nightmare. However, if we don't use that method, and we just go back to simplifying and isolating. This was 11, right? Here. Okay. There we go. All right. So now we want to isolate. So what were you going to say, Sal? You were going to say something.
If you subtract the 3.
Subtract the 3 first. Get this all by itself first. So you subtract 3, and then we have the square root of x is equal to 8, right?
And then you square them.
Then you square them, right? Square. That's okay. X is equal to 64. Piece of cake.
These are so easy.
You don't have to do plus and minuses. You don't have to worry about anything. You're just squaring both sides, right? So you got to simplify first. You have to isolate first. So that's so important. I'm going to write up here. Isolate radical first. So important. Okay. That was number 2. Can I erase number 2? I'll leave it up there. That's fine. 3. We'll go over 3 right here. Now we're going to make it a little harder. What if I said 2 times the square root of x minus 8 equals 0. All right, so Landon, help me. What would I do? What would be you do first?
The negative 8 isn't under the square root sign, right?
No, it isn't. This is under the square root sign, not that.
Subtract.
Good question.
Then I would subtract 8,
Okay.
or add 8, sorry.
Oh, yes, add 8. Okay, good. Add 8 to both sides. Now I have 2 times the square root of x is equal to 8.
And I divide by 2.
Ah. X is not isolated yet, right? You've got this 2 in the way, right? So, yeah, he's right. Divide by 2 first, right? You want to just say square root of x, right? So divide by 2, divide by 2. We've got the square root of x is equal to 4. Now what, Landon? Square both sides. These are easy, right? Aren't they easy? X is equal to 16. Piece of cake. Piece of cake. What if I gave you...
These are really easy. They're
Yeah,
really fun.
they're real easy. But they're fun because they're so easy, right? It's just kind of a breath of fresh air. I've thrown a lot of rather difficult stuff at you. We just finished the quadratics. And a lot of that stuff is difficult. And you know it better than a lot of high schoolers, honestly. I really mean it. I know for a fact. I know for a fact. And people will be asking you how to do that stuff because you get it. You understand it. Right? But it is hard. There are a lot of steps to those things. There are not a lot of steps to these. What if I gave you something like this? All right, I'm going to erase these. I'm just sort of going through now I'm going through some of the problems in the book. So we have 4 square root of x minus 7 plus 12. 4 square root of x minus 7. I lost it. What was it? Where am I? Plus 12 equals 28. Plus 12 equals 28. Okay. Gabe, what would you do first?
Subtract 12.
Subtract 12, subtract 12, subtract 12. All right, so now I have 4 times the square root of x minus 7 equals, what is that, 16? Okay, now what did you do, Gabe?
Divide by 4.
Divide by 4, because, right, we want the radical isolated. The 4 is outside the radical. We've got to eliminate that, get rid of it. So we're going to divide by 4, divide by 4. So we have now the square root of x minus 7 is equal to 4. All right, Gabe, what would you do now? Okay, square. You were waiting to see if I reacted to them saying that, right? Okay, yes. So square both sides. Even don't let the fact that that's a binomial under the square root sign scare you. You just square both sides, and all the square does is it gets rid of the square root sign. So you have x minus 7 is equal to 16. So then I'm going to add 7, and I get x is equal to 23, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Piece of cake, right? Fist of 5, right? Really easy, right? Really, really easy. Okay, 4, 5. Okay, 5. There's just a bunch of examples. Okay, 5. What if I gave you square root of 3x minus 17? Square root of 3x minus 17. That's all under square root sign equals square root of x plus 21. Okay, Emma, what would you do? Don't let it scare you, because it looks different than all the other ones, right? How would I get rid of the square root sign?
Square them all together.
If I squared, look, they're both isolated, right? So I could square both sides, right? Like I mean, and just by squaring it, I get rid of the square root sign and the square. Look at that. So all I have is 3x minus 17 is equal to x plus 21, and then you just solve it. You subtract x, subtract x. You've got 2x minus 17 is equal to 21. Boy, it's not looking very clear, is it? Sorry. And then add 17, add 17. So we have 2x is equal to 38. Divide by 2, divide by 2. X is equal to 19,
Wait.
I think. I did that kind of fast, am I
Very
right?
easy.
Right? So just by squaring both sides, you get your answer, right? Now, there's one last one, which is actually my favorite. And it's something like this. So that was number 5. Let's do number 6. These are really fun because they're just a little more advanced. Square root of 6 minus x equals x. The square root of 6 minus x, wait a minute, hang on. Is that right? Yeah. Equals x. Okay, so Indu, what would you do?
I would square both sides.
Square both sides, right? Because we got to get rid of that, and it's isolated. We got to get rid of that square root sign. Always, right? To solve for x, because it's on the x is under the square root sign. So we got to get rid of the square root sign, so we're going to square both sides. Now let's see what we got. We have 6 minus x is equal to x squared. Uh-oh. What do we do now? What do you always, is this going to end up being a quadratic?
Yeah.
All right, so what do you always want it to equal?
0. So
0.
subtract x squared from.
But I don't want a negative x.
Subtract x.
Then
Add
x. No, then add. Then
Well, if
subtract
x, you
6.
have
Why don't I subtract 6 and add x so that I keep my positive x squared, right? You see what I'm doing? Adding, minus 6 plus x. But I'm going to write it in the correct order. I'm not going to put the minus 6 in the middle. I'm going to put the x in the middle and the minus 6 at the end. So now I have 0 is equal to x squared plus x minus 6. What is that called? A trinomial, quadratic trinomial, right? And a is 1, right? So immediately what you do, are you sure, babe? Absolutely. So immediately what you do is you put your 2 sets of parentheses, right? Right? Immediately you've got your 2 sets of parentheses and you factor it, x, x. Factors of negative 6 that add to positive 1. What are they?
2 and 3.
2 and 3, which is negative?
Negative 2 and positive 3.
Negative 2, positive 3. Let's just double check. 3x minus 2x is 1x. Yes, that's it. So that means that's equal to 0. So x is either equal to positive 2 or negative 3.
It's probably 2.
Those are fun, right? I think it's kind of cool. That's it. That's all this whole section's about. Homework is right here. So get out your planner. I'm fine. Get out your planner and just write this down. So, I don't know if that'll show up on the screen or not. Probably not. I'll just rewrite it right here. Alright, so homework. So homework is page 732, numbers 3 through 5, 7 through 9, 11, 15 through 17, and 22 to 23. Pretty straightforward stuff. It won't take you long to do this stuff. But it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to share. So enjoy it.